This is a presentation by Barry LaValle of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. Today I want to bring attention to the problems that arise from motor vehicle drivers parking in the designated bike lanes. We'll observe the resultant dangers for the cyclists involved. To demonstrate, we have chosen a portion of the transportation corridor along North Park Drive, between Norma Crescent and Northampton Street. A mixture of aerial and ground footage was taken to document the concerns you will learn about in this presentation. Let's begin with a stationary overview from 120 meters high to facilitate seeing the big picture. Here we are looking westward. The cars on the north side of North Park are parked in the bike lanes. I'll pause the video here for a moment and outline them in red and a few in yellow to make it easier to put it in perspective. The cars highlighted in yellow, at the top left of the screen, are also obstructing the right-of-way for a bus stop. In all there are 35 cars parked in the bike lanes. Now let's drop down to ground level and follow two very experienced cyclists as they transition through the corridor from the previous aerial view. The camera view will alternate between forward motion views while traveling westbound, and rearward views with the camera pointed eastward. For safety reasons, it was necessary for the riders to take the lane. As a result, a line of cars traveling in the same direction quickly formed behind the trailing rider. The first car in the group, immediately behind the trailing rider, didn't take long to exhibit a common tendency of impatience in such situations. As the riders progressed through the corridor, with 32 cars littering the inaccessible bike lane, the driver of the first car continued to creep ever more dangerously closer to the trailing rider. This footage was taken with a 24mm equivalent wide-angle lens. You are not seeing lens compression here, a characteristic of a telephoto lens, that would give a false impression of the car being closer than it really is. The driver of the car is dangerously close, only about 2 bike lengths behind the trailing rider. It is common for car drivers to intimidate cyclists to try to get them to pull off to the side of the road. That is the behavior you're witnessing in this footage. As we reached a point with a small gap between cars, we pulled in towards the curb lane. The first driver in the line of cars then displayed road rage in its full glory as the driver stomped on the gas pedal and revved the engine hard and fast to go around us. We only had enough time for one car to go around before we had to take the lane again for another car parked in the bike lane beyond the intersection. I'm going to now pause the video for a moment to bring your attention to the Brampton Transit bus in the background. The operator is unable to get the rear of the bus out of the live traffic lane as it stops to pick up a passenger. 3 cars had to come to a full stop behind it. That is obstruction of traffic, not a fault of the bus operator, but due to the illegally parked cars. The drivers of those cars should be ticketed accordingly. Up next, way up, we can see the 3 cars parked past the solid line and into the area where the broken white line is. That indicates where the slip lane for the bus stop begins. I'm not going to pause the video here but have a look around the neighborhood, in general, and you'll see many cars parked along the side streets. Without doubt they are also attendees but have taken care to not park where they shouldn't. Now let's pause in front of Russell Barber Public School for a moment. This school is immediately to the west of the church, on the south side of North Park. Before we turn around to reveal the eastward path of travel, I'd like to point out the potential of the church administration inquiring to the school administration about potential of having a parking agreement on their property for Sunday morning services. However, as we now turn eastward, you will see 2 stretches of unused on-road parking available. Therefore, the school parking lot is probably not needed. I'm going to briefly pause the video here and outline the unused on-road spaces. As you can see, there are only 2 cars in it towards the top end. There's ample room for more cars to be parked here instead of in the bike lane. And as we get to the end of this aerial view clip, we have a good vantage point of the cars obstructing the bus slip lane, as I pause the video and highlight them in yellow. Let's drop back down to street level and follow along with 2 cyclists traveling eastward. They are exiting from the parking lot of the school we just observed. As we move along, we can see all the empty unused designated on-road parking space. Generous concessions of what should be a Vision Zero red flag was given to car culture by accommodating on-road parking for them, and forcing cyclists out between the parked cars and live traffic. As we get closer to the church, we are again greeted by 3 cars parked in the bike lane, one of which is probably also in violation of the no parking closer than 9 meters to an intersection bylaw. Observe the forward and rearward views as the riders approach, and take the live traffic lane to go around them. Protected bike lanes is safe infrastructure, as seen in this short clip of Brampton Active Transportation Advisory Committee members riding along Bloor Street in Toronto recently. Even in such a busy and congested environment, the streets are safe for people. Brampton's Vision Zero outlook is a clone of the region of Peel's vision, a strategy that is underwhelming. The city of Brampton is a bronze-rated, bicycle-friendly city, as designated by the criteria set forth in the application process by the Share the Road organization. Changes were made to the criteria to qualify when a main category of enforcement was discarded. The city's council-approved active transportation master plan is also a fragile framework that can have changes forced upon it by a single decision-maker, which breaks the safety of the network, with very little oversight or consensus by said council. Now, let's get back up to 40 meters in height to see the second stretch of unused on-road parking towards the east end of this dangerous corridor. Again, I'll highlight the area in green to facilitate its recognition. Also take notice of another school and parking lot that might present an opportunity for a parking agreement on Sundays. It is St. Marguerite Bourgeois. I'm now going to shift this presentation away from video footage and quickly focus on a few key important documents. When I set out to produce this documentary, I was not aware that the section of North Park presented here today still has not been rolled into the city's bylaws as designated bike lanes, according to the current published public document on the city's website, as seen here. The obvious bike lanes between Dixie Road and Williams Parkway are not mentioned. The section has been a bike lane long enough that the original paint is wearing off in places. Furthermore, the past term's Cycling Advisory Committee had brought attention to this matter, as is evidenced in this screenshot of the meeting minutes. That was 469 days ago. So in addition to the previous procedural neglect, there is also now neglect of implementation of an important motion, number 4, unless it's a clerical error that the currently published document is an oversight. If that is the case, then the neglect falls onto bylaw enforcement. Here is a city document outlining common parking infractions and their fine amounts. Next up is a repeat of research by a committee member that suggested the City of Brampton parking fines are too lenient in comparison to the national average across Canada. Based on this recent notification posted on social media by a city councillor, and subsequent media release by the city, concerning an increase in parking fines for obstruction of snow removal on city streets, I would have to agree. If an inconvenience that results in drivers having to steer around an area of an unplowed street is worth $500 on third violation, then how much is the safety and life of a cyclist or scooter user worth? And last but not least, consider this recent Supreme Court of Canada important ruling revolving around a city's claim to immunity from prosecution under court policy decisions versus operational decisions. Replace the snowbank in the case with a bike lane and the city's invitation to use it by implementing it. I'm not going to linger here, but I do encourage city staff and council to consider the implications, take the time to read the linked article, and consult with the legal department. Non-enforcement of parking in bike lanes is probably akin to operational decisions for the lack of snowbank removal. I attended a public questions and answers town hall meeting recently. It was for the purpose of ushering in the 2024 city budget. Among the noteworthy revelations was that funding has been established for hiring 5 additional bylaw officers. I hope that will then lead to a proactive approach to protecting the lives of the citizens on the dangerous streets for people.